The midday sun was merciless that afternoon, burning down on the red soil of Amuka village. A crowd had gathered around the small church, their faces lit not with joy, but with curiosity and mischief. This was not a normal wedding. It was a spectacle. People had come not to celebrate, but to laugh. Inside the church stood Emeka, a young man of just 24, thin from years of poverty, his shirt clinging awkwardly to his frame. His palms were sweaty, and his eyes refused to meet the crowd. He should have been a groom brimming with excitement, but his heart was heavy. Beside him, covered in a faded white lace wrapper, stood Mama Folasade, a woman almost 3 times his age. Her skin was wrinkled, her hair a crown of gray hidden under a scarf. Yet her eyes held a calm wisdom. She had lived a long, full life, and now she was marrying a boy who could easily be her grandson. The pastor, Reverend Adewale, cleared his throat. "Marriage is ordained by God," he began, his voice steady, though he could hear the whispers from the back rows. "It is not for man to mock what God has joined." But the congregation was restless. Ngozi, the neighbor woman known for gossip, leaned toward her friend and whispered loudly enough for others to hear. "Can you imagine? A boy of 24 marrying 70-year-old Mama Folasade? The ancestors will be laughing in their graves." A ripple of laughter spread through the church. Chief Oladipo, the village leader, shook his head with a smirk. "This is disgraceful," he muttered to the men beside him. "Instead of building his future, Emeka has chosen to bury it." Emeka's sister, Ifeoma, sat in the front pew, her arms crossed tightly. Her eyes darted around, angry at the whispers, angry at her brother, and angry at the world. She wanted to scream at them all, to tell them to shut their mouths. But deep inside, even she could not fully understand why Emeka had agreed to this marriage. The truth was simple. Poverty had cornered him. His father had died years ago, leaving Emeka, Ifeoma, and their sick mother with nothing but debts. For years, Emeka had labored on farms, carried loads to traders, and begged for small jobs in the city. Yet hunger followed them home every night. Mama Folasade, a widow with no children of her own, had quietly proposed the arrangement. She would care for Emeka's family, pay off their debts, and ensure his sister's education if he would become her husband. To everyone else, it looked absurd, but to Emeka, it felt like a sacrifice he had no choice but to make. "Do you, Emeka, take Folasade to be your lawfully wedded wife?" the pastor asked. The words echoed in his ears. His lips trembled. Behind him, he could hear the snickers, the shuffling of feet, the mocking coughs. Then he felt a light touch on his hand, Folasade's hand, thin and wrinkled but steady. He glanced at her face. She was not smiling, but her eyes told him something. Be strong. This is more than their laughter. I do, Emeka finally whispered. The church erupted in murmurs. Some chuckled, others shook their heads. "And do you, Folasade, take Emeka as her husband?" "I do," she said firmly, her voice louder than his, her tone filled with dignity. The pastor raised his hands. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." The crowd did not clap. Instead, laughter bubbled from the corners of the church. Some people left immediately, whispering about the shameful union. Outside, children ran around chanting, "Mama has married her grandson. Mama has married her grandson." Emeka felt his stomach twist. He wanted to disappear. His best friend, Shinonso, approached him at the church steps. "Emeka," he said softly, "why did you do this to yourself? Everyone will laugh at you forever. You deserve better." Emeka said nothing. He held his sister's hand tightly as they walked toward the small compound that was now his marital home. Behind him, the mocking voices followed. Jide, his old rival, shouted after him, "Emeka, tell me, will you call her my love or my grandmother?" The crowd roared with laughter. That night, as the village settled into silence, Emeka sat outside the small mud house with his thoughts. The moonlight washed over the compound, and from inside, he could hear Mama Folasade humming a psalm. It surprised him. It was gentle, soothing, and strangely comforting. Ifeoma came and sat beside him. Brother, she whispered, her eyes shining with tears. Why did you do this? You are only 24. How will you live like this? They will laugh at us forever. Emeka sighed. I did it for you, for Mama, for us. She promised to help pay our debts, to send you to school. I cannot watch us starve anymore, Ifeoma. Let them laugh. At least you will have a future. Ifeoma buried her face in her hands, torn between gratitude and sorrow. Inside, Mama Folasade sat quietly on her mat, her eyes moist though no one could see. She knew what the world thought of her. To them, she was a desperate old widow clinging to youth. But in her heart, she had prayed to God for years for someone to care for, someone to leave her legacy with. She had chosen Emeka not just to rescue him, but because she believed there was a kindness in his soul that the world had yet to see. And so the night of their marriage ended not with celebration, but with silence. Two hearts beating uneasily under the same roof, two souls bound together by necessity, mocked by society, yet unknowingly standing at the beginning of an extraordinary love story. The morning after the wedding was no different from any other in the Muaka village, except for one thing. Emeka's name was on every tongue. The cock had barely crowed when the chatter began. At the water well, women gathered with their clay pots, their voices carrying in the early dawn. Ngozi, the gossip queen, was at the center of it. Did you see him yesterday? She asked dramatically, lowering her bucket into the well. That boy looked like a prisoner at his own wedding. Ah, the shame on his face. He couldn't even say I do with confidence. The women burst into laughter, their bracelets jingling as they slapped their thighs. One added, even the ancestors must have turned in their graves. How can a man marry someone old enough to be his grandmother? By the time Emeka stepped out of his new home, the laughter had already spread across the village like wildfire. Children sang mocking songs as he walked past. Emeka, Emeka, husband of Grandma. He fetches her water. He fans her with palm. Their tiny voices echoed down the path, making his ears burn. He clenched his fists but kept walking. If he lashed out, they would only laugh harder. At the marketplace, the whispers were sharper. Traders paused from measuring Gary and pounding yam just to sneer at him. There he goes, one said, nudging his friend. The young husband of the old hen. Another replied, better call him caretaker, not husband. Even Chief Oladipo, the proud village leader, joined in the ridicule. Seated under the udala tree with his friends, he laughed loudly as Emeka passed. Boy, he called out, tell me, does she sing you lullabies at night, or do you sing them to her? The men erupted into laughter, so loud it seemed to shake the leaves above them. Emeka felt his stomach twist with shame. His heart screamed to shout back, to defend himself, but his lips stayed sealed. Every step through the market felt heavier than the last. Back at home, Mama Folasade noticed his slumped shoulders and downcast eyes. She said nothing at first, only offered him a plate of yam porridge. He pushed it aside, his appetite lost. Finally, she spoke. Let them laugh. Emeka, their laughter will not feed you. Their words will not build your future. You must learn to carry yourself with dignity, no matter what they say. Emeka looked at her, frustrated. It's easy for you to say, Mama. They are laughing at me. I am the one they call a fool. Every child, every elder, even my own friends mock me. Do you know why? She asked calmly. Because they see me as weak, he muttered. No, she said firmly. Because they fear what they do not understand. They do not know your heart. They do not know the strength it takes to make a sacrifice. Her words silenced him. For the first time, he saw not just wrinkles on her face, but wisdom carved deep into every line. Still, he could not shake the shame clinging to his chest. That evening, his best friend Shinanso came by. He lingered at the doorway, uneasy. Emeka, he said cautiously, I came to see you. I know I laughed yesterday, but I shouldn't have. Forgive me. Emeka stared at him, surprised. You laugh louder than anyone. Shinanso rubbed the back of his neck. I know. I was wrong. I just couldn't believe it. But you are still my brother. I don't want this to break us apart. Emeka sighed, the weight of betrayal still heavy. They will never let me live in peace. Every day, I will be the butt of their jokes. Maybe, Shinonso admitted. But maybe in time they will forget, or maybe you will prove them wrong. Who knows? For the first time that day, a faint smile tugged at Emika's lips. He nodded, appreciating his friend's attempt. Days turned into weeks, and the ridicule only grew. Children left small bundles of firewood at his doorstep, mocking him. For your old wife, so she doesn't catch cold. Men in the palm wine bar laughed whenever he entered, toasting loudly to our youngest grandson-in-law. Even women whispered behind his back at the well, he must be bewitched. No sane man would choose this. But in the quiet of their home, something different was happening. Mama Folisade, despite her age, moved with grace. She tended to her garden, cooked with care, and even told stories in the evenings. Stories of Nigeria she had seen in her youth, when the world was different, when men fought wars and women held villages together. At first, Emika only half listened, but soon he found himself drawn to her words. She spoke with such passion, such memory, that he began to see her not as a burden, but as a living library of wisdom. One evening, as she told a story about her late husband, her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Emika watched her closely, something shifting in his chest. For the first time, he saw her not as the old woman he had married, but as a human being, one who had loved, lost, and still carried dignity through it all. That night, when the village mocked him again, calling from outside his compound, "Emika, how is Grandma wife?" He simply closed the door and ignored them. Inside, he sat by Mama Falisade's side as she hummed her psaltem. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the shame began to fade. Something new was stirring within him. Confusion, curiosity, and perhaps the very first whisper of affection. The rains had returned to Umuaka, turning the dusty paths into muddy tracks. For many, the season brought both hardship and relief. Crops would grow, but roofs would leak. In Emika's compound, the soft patter of rain against the thatched roof became the background to a slow, almost invisible transformation. Emika had grown used to the whispers of the village, though they still stung. But inside the home, life was calmer, gentler. He noticed things about Mama Falisade that he had once ignored. The way she knelt carefully to tend her small vegetable patch, her wrinkled hand steady as she tied up stalks of okra. The way her laughter, rare but genuine, filled the compound with unexpected warmth. One afternoon, as he returned from the farm, soaked from head to toe, she met him at the doorway with a cloth. "Come inside, Emika. You will catch a fever if you stay like this," she said, pulling him in before he could protest. He hesitated, uncomfortable with her fussing. "I am fine," he muttered, but she ignored him. She pressed the cloth into his hands and poured warm water into a basin. "Washington, I will prepare soup. You must eat hot food on a day like this." Her concern stirred something inside him. He could not explain it, but for the first time, her care felt comforting. Not like a duty she performed out of obligation, but like something deeper. That evening, as he ate the pepper soup she had made, he looked at her across the table. She caught his gaze and smiled. "What is it?" she asked. He shook his head quickly, embarrassed. "Nothing." But inside, his heart was restless. The village, of course, had not relented. Ngozi, the gossip woman, grew bolder. One day at the market, she approached him directly. "Emika, tell me the truth. When you sleep, does she snore so loud you cannot rest? Or do you both take turns telling bedtime stories?" Her cackle was sharp, and others joined in. This time, Emika did not flare with shame. He simply picked up his basket of cassava and walked away. Behind him, the laughter sounded smaller, weaker, almost meaningless. He went home that evening, strangely proud of himself. When Mama Falisade asked why he was smiling, he shrugged. "Let them laugh. Their words cannot change my life." Her eyes shone with quiet pride. "You are learning," she said softly. One night, a heavy storm tore through Umuaka. Thunder cracked, and the wind howled, rattling the shutters. Emika could not sleep. As he lay awake, he heard Mama Falisade humming him in the next room. It was a song of comfort, one his own mother had once sung when he was a boy. The melody carried through the darkness, wrapping around him like a blanket. Without thinking, he rose and walked to her door. She was sitting on the mat, eyes closed, her voice steady despite the storm outside. For a long moment, he simply watched her. Then he sat down beside her, wordless. She glanced at him, surprised, but said nothing. Together, they sat in silence, the storm raging outside, the hymn filling the air between them. When she finally rested her hand lightly on his, he did not pull away. Something shifted that night. Something fragile, something powerful. The days that followed deepened that shift. Emeka began to seek her company more often. He asked about her past, about the stories she carried. She told him of her youth, how she had once been the village beauty, courted by many, how she had married a farmer who had loved her fiercely until death took him, how she had lived through famine, war, and change, yet endured. Emeka listened, fascinated. For the first time, he saw her not as the old woman forced upon him, but as a woman who had lived, loved, and survived. One afternoon, he asked quietly, "Mama, do you ever regret marrying me?" She looked at him, her eyes steady. "At first, I did, not because of you, but because I thought I was dragging you into my grave. But now, no, I do not regret it." "Why?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Because you see me," she replied. "Not many in this world do anymore." Her words struck him like lightning. That night, as he lay awake, he admitted to himself what he had been denying. He was beginning to care for her, truly care, not as a duty, not as pity, but as affection that was growing stronger each day. The village, however, only grew crueler. Jide, his rival, mocked him in front of others. "Emeka, tell me, do you call her darling or grandmother? Perhaps you ask her to sing you lullabies before bed." The crowd roared with laughter. This time, Emeka turned, his voice sharp. "Better to love a woman with wisdom than chase foolish girls who bring only shame." The laughter faltered. Jide's face burned red, and for once, the crowd did not know what to say. Emeka walked away, his heart pounding, but his spirit strong. That evening, when he told Mama Falasé what had happened, she chuckled softly. "Careful, my husband. Soon they will say you have fallen in love with your old wife." He looked at her, his chest tightening. He wanted to speak the truth, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he only smiled. But deep inside, he knew the whispers of his heart had become too loud to ignore. The harmattan winds returned to Muluka, carrying with them the dry dust that coated rooftops, paths, and every breath. It was in this season that Mama Falasé's health began to fail. At first, it was only small things, coughs in the night, a wince as she bent to fetch water, moments when her breath grew short. Emeka noticed. He always noticed now. One evening, as she struggled to rise from her mat, he rushed to her side. "Sit, Mama," he said firmly. "I will fetch the water. You must rest." She smiled faintly. "You are too young to be burdened with an old woman's weakness." He shook his head, his tone gentle but determined. "You are my wife, not a burden." Those words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning neither of them fully spoke aloud. Within weeks, her condition worsened. The cough deepened, her body thinned, and her once lively steps became shuffling drags. The village noticed, and the mockery took a new turn. At the well, Ngozi whispered loudly enough for others to hear, "Ah, see? Soon Emeka will be free. When she dies, he can marry a young girl at last." Laughter followed, cruel and sharp, but instead of relief, the words ignited fury in Emeka's chest. "Shut your mouth, Ngozi," he snapped one morning, startling everyone. "My wife's life is worth more than all your gossip." The women fell silent, shocked. For the first time, he had spoken without shame, his voice strong and unwavering, determined to help Mama Falasé. Emeka worked harder than ever. He rose before dawn to farm, sold extra bundles of firewood, and even took small jobs in neighboring villages. Every kobo he earned went toward medicine, herbs, and food for her. One night, he returned home late, his hands blistered, carrying a small parcel of herbs. She was sitting by the doorway, waiting for him. "Why do you do all this, Emeka?" she asked softly. He knelt beside her, placing the herbs in her hands. "Because you matter to me." More than their laughter, more than my pride. You matter. Her eyes filled with tears, though she tried to hide them. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence was not empty. It was full of something unspoken, something tender. The illness worsened still. Fever came in waves, leaving her weak and trembling. Emeka refused to leave her side. He wiped her brow, fed her broth, and prayed with Pastor Adewale, who often visited to encourage him. One night, as thunder rumbled in the distance, Mama Folasade clutched his hand weakly. "Emeka," she whispered, "when I am gone, you must live. You must find joy again. Do not let them break you." Tears stung his eyes. He shook his head fiercely. "Do not speak like that. You are not going anywhere. Not while I still breathe." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "You are stubborn, just like my first husband. Perhaps that is why God gave you to me." He bowed his head, overwhelmed. "I cannot lose you," he whispered. "Not now, not when I—" He stopped himself, the words caught in his throat. But she knew. She saw in his eyes. She squeezed his hand gently. Days passed, and word spread to the village of Emeka's devotion. Even those who once mocked began to murmur differently. At the palm wine bar, men whispered, "Have you seen how he cares for her? Day and night, like a true husband." At the market, women shook their heads in wonder. Maybe it is not witchcraft. Maybe it is love. Ifeoma, Emeka's younger sister, visited often, helping to cook and clean. She pulled her brother aside one afternoon. "They used to laugh at you, but now they are beginning to respect you." Emeka shrugged, weary from long nights. "Let them think what they want. I do not do this for them. I do it because I love her." The word slipped out before he realized it. For a moment, he froze. Then, with a deep breath, he accepted the truth. He loved her. One evening, Mama Folasade was too weak to sit up. Emeka lifted her gently in his arms, holding her as though she were fragile glass. She looked at him, her eyes watery but alive with emotion. "Young as you are," she whispered, "you have given me a gift I thought I would never feel again." "What gift?" he asked. "Love," she said simply. The tears he'd been holding back finally spilled. He pressed her hand to his chest, his voice breaking. "And you have given me the same. You are my wife, my heart, my everything." That night, he sat by her bedside long after she fell asleep. Outside, the village was quiet, the harmattan winds whispering through the trees. He thought of the laughter, the shame, the gossip. None of it mattered anymore. What mattered was a woman sleeping beside him, the bond they shared, the love that had bloomed where no one believed it could. And though fear gnawed at him, the fear of losing her, he also felt a strength he had never known. Whatever came, he would stand by her, not out of duty, not out of pity, but out of love. The sun burned bright over Amuaka, casting sharp light on the red earth and tin rooftops. Word had spread quickly that Mama Falasade's illness had eased. The herbs, the prayers, and Emeka's tireless devotion had nursed her back to strength. Though she still moved slowly, her cough had lessened, her eyes were clearer, and her laughter had returned in soft bursts. But while her body healed, the whispers in the village did not fade. They simply shifted. "Did you see how that boy carried her on his back to the healer?" One woman muttered at the market, as if she were a queen. Another scoffed. "It is shameful. He is bewitched, surely." Still, others shook their heads in wonder. No man has ever loved like that. Maybe there is something true here. The mockery was no longer one-sided. Doubt had begun to mingle with respect. One Saturday morning, the entire village gathered in the square for the monthly meeting called by Chief Oladipo. Under shade of the great Udala tree, villagers sat on benches or mats, buzzing with chatter. Emeka arrived late, helping Mama Folasade to her seat. Instantly, whispers rose. All eyes turned to them. Some smirked, some sneered, but others watched with curiosity. Chief Oladipo, sitting tall in his flowing igbata, cleared his throat. "We are here to discuss the new farmland allocation," he began. But after a few moments, his gaze drifted to Emeka. A sly smile spread across his lips. "Before we continue," the chief said, his voice booming, "I must address something that has made our village famous in every neighboring town. Tell me, Emeka, what kind of man weds a woman old enough to be his grandmother? What kind of man wastes his youth on a graveyard romance? The crowd erupted into laughter. Some clapped, some whistled, others banged the ground in amusement. Even Jide, Emeka's rival, shouted, "Yes, let him answer." Emeka's chest tightened, his fists clenching at his sides. He glanced at Mama Falasé beside him, her head bowed in silent shame. The sight broke something inside him. For too long, he had endured their ridicule. For too long, he had swallowed his words. He rose to his feet. The laughter died slowly, curiosity replacing mockery as the villagers turned to him. "My chief," Emeka began, his voice steady though his heart pounded, "and all the Muaka, today I will answer you." The silence deepened. Even the rustle of the Idala leaves seemed to hush. "You ask what kind of man weds a woman old enough to be his grandmother. I will tell you, a man who understands that love is not measured in years. A man who values wisdom, kindness, and strength more than youthful skin. A man who sees beauty where others are blind." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Chief Oladipo frowned, but Emeka continued, his voice growing stronger. "Yes, I am young. Yes, she is old. But in her, I have found more love than any girl my age could give me. When the world laughed at me, she stood by me. When I was empty, she filled me with wisdom. And when she fell ill, I learned that my heart could not bear to lose her. You call it shame. I call it love." He turned toward Mama Falasade, his eyes shining. "You are my wife, and I love you. I am not ashamed." The square fell utterly silent. Even the children, who had once mocked with songs, stared wide-eyed. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Pastor Adewale rose from his bench, his voice deep and firm. "What this young man has said is true. Love is not for us to measure. Even the scriptures teach that love is patient, love is kind. Who are we to mock what God has joined?" A murmur of agreement spread. Some nodded slowly. Others whispered among themselves. The laughter had vanished, replaced by something heavier, something new. Chief Oladipo scowled, shifting uncomfortably. "Humph. Fine words, but still foolish." But even he could not hide the unease in his voice. For the first time, Emeka had spoken with the strength of a man unafraid. That night, back in their compound, Mama Falasade sat quietly, her eyes glistening. "Why did you do it?" she asked softly. "Because it was time," Emeka replied. "I was tired of hiding, tired of their laughter. I wanted them to know the truth." "And what truth is that?" He took her hands in his voice trembling but firm. "That I love you, that I will not let their words shame me anymore." Her lips trembled, tears spilling freely now. "Emeka, do you know what those words mean to me? For so long, I thought my days of love were over. Yet here you are, young, strong, and you have given me a gift I never dreamed to hold again." He drew her into his arms, holding her gently but tightly. For the first time, their love was not hidden, not whispered in silence, but spoken aloud, strong enough to shake the village itself. In the days that followed, the village changed. The children no longer sang mocking songs. The women at the well still whispered, but some with envy, not ridicule. Men in the palm wine bar shook their heads, saying, "Perhaps the boy has courage we do not." And though Chief Oladipo and Jide still sneered, their laughter rang hollow, powerless against the truth that had been spoken. For Emeka and Mama Falasade, life did not suddenly become easy, but it became freer. Their hearts no longer bowed under the weight of shame. Their love had found its voice, and once spoken, it could not be silenced. Months passed in the Muaka, and with them, the memory of laughter began to fade. What once had been a favorite subject of gossip, the young man married to an old widow, was no longer a source of entertainment. Instead, the villagers spoke of something different: respect. Everywhere Emeka went, people noticed how he carried himself. He no longer walked with his head bowed in shame, but upright, steady, and proud. When he spoke, his words carried weight. He worked harder than ever in the farms, and though his hands blistered, he never complained. And beside him, always, was Mama Falasade, frail in body but strong in presence. One morning, As they walked together to market, a group of children passed by. Once, those same children had mocked him with cruel songs. Now, they greeted respectfully. "Good morning, Uncle Emeka." "Good morning, Mama." Mama Falisade's eyes watered as she whispered, "Do you see? Even the little ones have changed." Emeka squeezed her hand. "It is not they who changed, Mama. It is we who taught them." The turning point for the entire village came during the annual New Yam Festival. It was the most important event of the year, when dancers filled the square, drums beat like thunder, and chiefs from nearby villages visited to celebrate. On that day, Chief Oladipo sat proudly at the head of the gathering, ready to display his wealth and influence. He expected to be the center of attention, but instead, the eyes of the people were on Emeka. He had been chosen to give the opening speech, a decision made by the elders after much debate. Many argued that his devotion, courage, and love had made him an example for the youth. As Emeka stood in the center of the square, wearing a simple but clean white attire, the crowd grew silent. Mama Falisade sat nearby, her head wrapped in a fine scarf, her face glowing with pride. "My people," Emeka began, his voice carrying over the drums, "today we celebrate the harvest, the gift of life and labor. But I also stand here to speak of another gift, love. Love that is mocked, love that is doubted, love that survives against laughter and shame. I have learned that love is not measured by age, nor judged by beauty, but proven by sacrifice." He looked directly at Mama Falisade. "If love can bloom between a poor boy and a 70-year-old woman, then surely love can bloom anywhere. It is not bound by years, by wealth, or by the judgment of others. It is a seed planted in the heart, watered by devotion, and it grows stronger with time." The square erupted, not with laughter this time, but with thunderous applause. Drummers beat their talking drums louder, dancers sprang to their feet, and even the elders nodded in agreement. Chief Oladipo scowled, but even he could not silence the wave of respect washing over the young man he had once mocked. In the weeks that followed, Emeka and Mama Falisade became symbols of something greater than themselves. Young couples sought their advice. Women whispered to each other, "If she can find love at 70, who are we to give up hope?" Men admitted quietly, "Perhaps true strength is not in mocking, but in standing by one's choice." Shinonso, Emeka's childhood friend, clapped him on the shoulder one evening. "Brother, they used to laugh at you. Now they call you wise. You have changed this village." Emeka smiled humbly. "Not I alone. Mama and I together." Mama Falisade, sitting nearby, laughed softly. "Do not give me too much credit. It was your heart that refused to give up." But Emeka shook his head. "No, Mama. It was our love that refused to die." One evening, as the sun dipped behind the palm trees and the sky glowed orange, Emeka and Mama Falisade sat side by side outside their hut. The air was cool, the breeze gentle. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked suddenly, her voice quiet. "Regret what?" "Marrying me." He turned to her, his eyes clear. "Never. It was the hardest path, but it led me to the greatest truth, that love is not bound by age, but by the heart." She smiled, leaning her head gently against his shoulder. For a long time, they sat in silence, watching the evening descend upon the village. And though others might still whisper, though time would continue its relentless march, their love stood firm, unshaken, unashamed, and now deeply respected. In the heart of Amuaka, the boy once mocked for marrying a 70-year-old woman had become a man admired for loving without fear. Their story will be told for generations, not as a tale of shame, but as a lesson that true love is beyond age, beyond ridicule, and beyond time itself.